Eric Dane was more than McSteamy. He was a man who rose from childhood tragedy to become one of TV's most magnetic stars, survived addiction, weathered scandal, rebuilt himself, and then faced the one battle he couldn't outrun. In the final year of his life, ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, stripped away his strength but not his honesty, his courage, or his love for the family who stood beside him. This is the story of Eric Dane. The fame, the fallout, the fight, and the legacy he left behind. Eric Dane was born on November 9, 1972, in San Francisco, California, long before the world knew him as McSteamy Cal Jacobs, or the man whose face could carry an entire scene with a single look. He grew up in the Bay Area, and his childhood was marked by a loss that never really left him. His father died when Eric was still young, a trauma that carved a quiet hollow inside him. He didn't talk about it much, but you could feel it in the way he played men who were charming on the surface and haunted underneath. He didn't become an overnight success. He spent years grinding through guest spots and small roles. Saved by the Bell, Charmed, Gideon's Crossing, The Basket, X-Men, The Last Stand. The kind of work that keeps you employed but doesn't make you unforgettable. He was one of those faces you recognized without knowing why. Then Grey's Anatomy happened and everything changed. When he walked onto that show as Dr. Mark Sloan, the world met McSteamy. The towel scene, the swagger, the smirk, it was instant pop culture combustion. He wasn't just another doctor on a medical drama. He became a phenomenon. Fans fell in love with him. And the industry finally saw what he could do when the camera stayed on him. Off-screen, his life was just as intense. In 2004, he married actress Rebecca Gayheart. They were one of those couples that looked like a movie poster, beautiful, luminous, very Hollywood. Together, they had 2 daughters, Billy and Georgia. And for a while, it seemed like he built the family he'd always wanted. A home, kids. A partner who understood the business and the chaos that came with it. He often said his daughters were the center of his world. And that line would later echo in the statement his family released after his death. But fame never comes alone. In 2009, a private video leaked and detonated across the internet. Eric, Rebecca, and former Miss Teen USA Carrie and Paniche, all nude, clearly intoxicated, in what the media immediately branded a threesome tape. It wasn't explicit sex, but it was messy enough to become a scandal. The tabloids feasted. Eric and Rebecca insisted it wasn't a sex tape, just a stupid, drug-fueled moment that never should have been filmed, but the damage was done. The story stuck to them, feeding the narrative of the beautiful actor with the beautiful wife, and the very public mistakes. That scandal became part of his mythology, proof that his life off-screen could be as chaotic as any storyline he was given. Behind the headlines, he was fighting battles that were much darker than a leaked video. Eric struggled with addiction, painkillers, alcohol, depression. He checked into rehab, stepped back, tried to reset. He spoke openly about losing control, about the pressure of fame, about the disconnect between the man the world thought he was and the man he was trying to become. That honesty didn't clean up his image. It did something more important. It made him human. People who had only known him as McSteamy started to see the man underneath the nickname. His career shifted again when he took on the role of Cal Jacobs in Euphoria. It was a risk, a dark, deeply flawed, closeted, morally compromised man whose life was built on secrets and shame. Eric played him with a rawness that felt almost too close to the bone. You could see the years of internal conflict, the weight of choices, the cost of living a double life. It was a second act that reminded everyone he wasn't just a pretty face on a network drama. He was a serious actor who could carry complicated, uncomfortable truth. Then, in April 2025, he made an announcement that stunned fans and colleagues around the world. Eric Dane had been diagnosed with ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, a progressive, incurable neurodegenerative disorder that slowly robs the body of its ability to move, speak, and eventually breathe. He was only in his early 50s. The news landed like a punch. He knew exactly what ALS meant. He knew the timeline, and he chose not to hide. From that moment on, his life took on a different shape. He kept working as long as he could, continuing to act while his body began to betray him. At the same time, he became a vocal advocate for ALS awareness and research. He used his platform to push for funding, visibility, and compassion for others living with the disease. Interviews shifted from career talk to conversations about mortality, dignity, and what it means to live fully when you know your time is limited. He didn't sugarcoat it. He talked about fear, about anger, about acceptance, and about wanting to leave something meaningful behind for his daughters. His marriage to Rebecca had been complicated for years. She filed for divorce in 2018, and for a long time it looked like their story was over. But when his ALS diagnosis came, everything changed. In 2025, she withdrew the divorce filing, choosing to stand by him and their daughters as they faced the disease together. It wasn't a Hollywood fairy tale. It was something more grounded and more real. A decision to show up for family in the middle of a crisis. Whatever had happened between them before, whatever fractures existed, they closed ranks when it mattered most. As the disease progressed, Eric's public appearances became less frequent. But when he did appear, you could feel the weight of what he was carrying. Co-stars, friends, and fans rallied around him. The man who had once been known for his physical presence, his body, his looks, his on-screen magnetism, was now being celebrated for his courage, his vulnerability, and his refusal to disappear quietly. He turned his own decline into a platform for others, insisting that if he had a voice, he was going to use it. On February 19, 2026, Eric Dane died at the age of 53, after a year-long battle with ALS. His family said he spent his final days surrounded by dear friends, his devoted wife and his two daughters, Billy and Georgia, the center of his world. The news broke the next day and the tributes poured in. Castmates from Grey's Anatomy, colleagues from Euphoria, friends from decades in the industry. All of them spoke about his humor, his generosity, his professionalism, and the way he lit up a set. Fans mourned not just the loss of McSteamy or Cal Jacobs, but the loss of a man whose story had become intertwined with their own lives. In the days that followed, people revisited his work with new eyes. The tragic death of Mark Sloan on Grey's Anatomy, a character taken too soon after a devastating accident, suddenly felt heavier, almost prophetic. Watching Cal Jacobs unravel on Euphoria hit differently, knowing what the actor himself had been facing in his final years. His performances became more than entertainment. They became artifacts of a life lived under intense scrutiny, with real pain just beneath the surface. Eric Dane's legacy is complicated in all the ways that real human lives are complicated. He was the man who made millions swoon as McSteamy, the man who stumbled through scandal, the man who fought addiction and didn't pretend it was easy, the man who took on one of the darkest roles on television and filled it with bruised humanity, the man who faced ALS with honesty and defiance. He was a husband, an ex, a partner again. He was a father who tried to make sure his daughters would remember not just the headlines, but the person behind them. In the end, his story isn't just about fame or scandal or even illness. It's about a man who lived big, messed up big, loved big, and refused to let his worst moments or his disease define the totality of who he was. Eric Dane's life, with all its beauty and wreckage, is a reminder that even the people who look untouchable on screen are fragile, mortal, and fighting battles we don't see. And now, after his untimely death, the work he left behind, and the honesty he showed in his final chapter, are what remain, asking us to remember him not as a myth, but as a man. Rest in paradise. Eric Dane. If you were an Eric Dane fan, or if you enjoyed this video, please throw me a thumb. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see y'all in the next one.